The Testament of the 12 Patriarchs, a collection of the final words from the sons of Jacob, exhorting their sons to walk in truth and in righteousness. Each patriarch has a unique message and perspective to share with the audience, containing unmistakable messianic prophecies and visions of end times revelation and impending judgment. The Testaments reflect some of the highest and noblest ethical teaching available, and truly foreshadow many of Messiah's own precepts. The collection was preserved in Greek, Slavonic, Georgian, Serbian, Armenian, Venetian, and Latin. They were included in some canons, such as Armenian Orthodox, and were quoted by and alluded to through prominent early assembly writers, such as Origen and Jerome. Nevertheless, they are speculated by scholars to be pseudepigraphal and perhaps even Christian works. However, the avid researcher may be excited to know that the Dead Sea Scrolls findings included parts of Levi and Naphtali, dating to a minimum of 100 to 200 BC, thus lending credibility to the entire work. While we believe the Testaments to be inspired and profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, and instruction in righteousness, it is up to you to test them and decide. With that being said, let's study together and show ourselves approved. Shabbat Shalom and welcome back, brothers and sisters. Welcome to the Parable of the Vineyard YouTube live stream of our Testament of 12 Patriarchs study. This is Joseph, and I'm really excited to go over this one with you. As we've been learning, if you've joined us on our previous ones, most of the patriarchs are sharing with us what not to do, showing us some of the pitfalls of life and testings and the nature of man and these spiritual influences and how to escape them. Well, in Joseph, we'll get that as well, but for the most part, we get a perspective of what to do. As a matter of fact, Joseph is a foreshadow of Messiah, and we get to see Joseph being tested much like Messiah, because we know that the word says that Messiah was tested in every way, just like as is common to man. And Joseph was found approved, much like Abraham. In one of the writings, it says Abraham was tested 10 times and was found faithful in each one. Likewise, in Joseph was tested 10 times and found faithful. So really excited to go over this with you. We're going to title this one Walking Like Messiah. And that's one of the commandments for us in 1 John 2:6 that says, he that says that he lives in Messiah, ought to walk even as he walked. So we're also supposed to walk like Messiah. So regardless of our pasts and the lives we used to live, now we've been called to the truth. We've been called to Messiah. We've been called to repentance and baptism and faith and good works. So now we're called to walk like Messiah. And Joseph is an amazing example for us, and I'm excited to go over it with you. So let's pray. Father Yah in heaven, we just come before you and bless you and thank you for sending your son, Messiah Yahushua, that we may have forgiveness and everlasting life. We thank you for your words, especially these words that have been hidden for these end times generation, for us, Father, that we may grow together and be ready at the coming of Messiah Yahushua. And we just thank you so much and ask you to soften our hearts and open our eyes and ears to hearing your word, that we may grow together. In Yahushua's name, amen, hallelujah. All right, quick shofar blast, and let's do this. All right, here we are. Okay, so let's go to the Testament of Joseph. This is on parableofvineyard.com. So if you want to read this for free, it's all over the internet. And here's just our version with the restored names. And let's get into it. I'm super excited. All right. The Testament of Joseph. A copy of the Testament of Joseph. When he was about to die, he called his sons and his brothers and said to them, "My brothers and my children, listen to Joseph, the one beloved of Israel. Give ear to the words of my mouth. In my life I have seen envy and death, but I have not gone astray. I persevered in the truth of Yahweh." And we're already going to stop here because just imagine we're sitting before him and he's telling us these words of life and giving us these warnings. We're living in some crazy times, are we not? Do we not see envy and death all around us? Envy can lead into covetousness. Covetousness is like consumerism and keeping up with the Joneses and all sorts of things like that. But I do believe that we are the end times generation. And Paul has some interesting words for us. Many of you are familiar with these words, 2 Timothy 3, 1 through 4. This know also that in the last days perilous times shall come, for men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasure more than the lovers of Elohim. And I don't know. I mean, can you point to any other time in history where it was this bad? Maybe in the days of Noah, maybe in the days of Lot, like Messiah said. I'm not sure. Let's take a look at the Testament of Benjamin, chapter 1, chapter 2, 1 through 3. And it says, "And do ye, my children, flee evildoing, envy, and hatred of brethren." And that's what really came against Joseph. Most of you know the biblical account of Joseph, that his brothers were jealous and envious of him and wanted to kill him. So it says, "My children, flee from evil doing, envy, and hatred of brethren, and cleave to goodness and love. He that has a pure mind in love looks not after a woman with a view to fornication, for he has no defilement in his heart." And this is something that this world is brewing with young men, is to get them overstimulated, over hyper, what this is like this on their mind. And he says not to have this kind of mindset. So we need to guard our eyes, guard our ears, for because the Spirit of Elohim rests upon him. Listen to this. This is a really interesting passage. "For as the sun is not defiled by shining on dung and mire," so feces and other gross stuff, "but rather dries up both and drives away the evil smell." You know what happens to you take your dog outside and it goes bathroom way out in the field, not right next to your house, right? And after a while, it dries it up and no longer stinks, and it's just there. That's what the sun does. So listen to this. So let me read this again. "For as the sun is not defiled by shining on dung and mire, but rather dries up both and drives away the evil smell, so also the pure mind, though encompassed by the defilements of the earth, rather cleanses them and is not itself defiled." So we are supposed to be like shining lights, like little suns, that even though there's darkness and filth and all sorts of things around us, we're not influenced by it, but we influence others. That's where we're supposed to be the light, to share the light with others, to come to the light. And so this goes back to what was going on with Joseph. "In my life I have seen envy and death." He was all around these evil things, but he has not gone astray and persevered in the truth of Yahweh. We know Psalm 119, 142 says his Torah is the truth. It's his instructions for living. So you must remain unstained. We see some similar passages from James and I believe Jude or Peter. James 1:27 says, "Pure religion and undefiled before Elohim and the Father is this, to visit the fatherless and the widows in their affliction," and listen, "and to keep himself unspotted from the world." So if Messiah washes our garments, which Revelation says they have come out of great tribulation and have washed their robes in the blood of the Lamb, so he cleans us, we're supposed to keep them clean. So even though some of us may have been filthy in our previous lives and had completely stained garments, he washed them clean. That doesn't mean we go back and just get them all dirty again, because the blood of Messiah will just keep cleaning us and cleaning us. We need to work towards keeping ourselves unspotted from the world. 2 Peter 3:14 says, "Wherefore, beloved, seeing that you look for such things," this end times, "be diligent that you may be found of him in peace, without spot and blameless." We're supposed to work towards being blameless. So let's keep going. So back to Testament of Joseph, chapter 1, verse 4 says, "My brothers hated me, but Yahweh loved me. They wanted to kill me, but the Elohim of my fathers preserved me. Into a pit they lowered me, and the Most High raised me up. They sold me into slavery. Yahweh of all set me free. I was taken into captivity, and the strength of his hand came to my aid. I was overtaken by hunger, and Yahweh himself fed me generously. So it's like no matter what he faced, Yah was there for him, and I believe that's available for us as well. Doesn't mean we're not going to go through hardships. Look at all the rough times that Joseph went through. We'll talk about that here in a second, but I was alone, and Elohim came to help me. I was in weakness, and Yahweh showed his concern for me. I was in prison, and the Savior acted graciously in my behalf. I was in bonds, and he loosed me. Slandered, and he testified on my behalf. Assaulted by bitter words of the Egyptians, and he rescued me. Envied by my fellow slaves, and he exalted me. Joseph, a man exalted by Yahweh, but faced so many trials. Life was hard for him. Think about his first 27 years. Well, his first 17 years were pretty good. His father treated him really well, but then he was sold into slavery. He was in bonds for 12 years. Falsely imprisoned, beat, whipped, envied by his brothers, thrown into a pit, sold as a slave. He faced many trials, and that's the thing that I think a lot of people misunderstand is that when they look at someone who's going through some hard things, they're like, oh, he must deserve it. He must be, Yah must be, punishing him for all his wrongdoings. When we look at the scriptures, that's not always the case. I mean, sometimes it happened, like David, he messed up really bad. Yah forgave him, but he's like, now the sword's not going to depart from your house. So he was punished. But you look at like Abraham, he went through so many hard trials. You look at through Noah, look at all the crazy trials Noah went through. You look at Moses, you look at Job. Sometimes that's just our portion in life. And there's a set of scriptures that really speaks to this loudly, that this is our portion, which is to be tested and to go through these trials, these man-making and woman-making experiences. 2 Ezra 7, 1-14. When I had finished speaking these words, the angel who had been sent to me on the former nights was sent to me again. And he said to me, "Rise, Ezra, and listen to the words that I have come to speak to you." I said, "Speak, my master." And he said, "There is a sea set in a wide expanse, so that it is broad and vast. But it has an entrance set in a narrow place, so that it is like a river. If anyone then wishes to reach the sea, to look at it, or to navigate it, how can he come to the broad part unless he passes through the narrow part?" Another example. Now this is an example about New Jerusalem. "There is a city built and set on a plain, and it is full of all good things. But the entrance to it is narrow and set in a precipitous place, so that there is fire on the right hand and deep water on the left, both dangerous things. And there is only one path lying between them, that is, between the fire and the water, so that only one man can walk upon that path. If now that city is given to a man for an inheritance, how will the heir receive his inheritance unless he passes through the danger set before him?" I said, "He cannot, master." And he said to me, "So also is Israel's portion." We got to walk through the danger. We got to walk through the hard times. "For I made the world for their sake, and when Adam transgressed my statutes, what had been made was judged. And so the entrances of this world were made narrow and sorrowful and toilsome. They are few and evil." And this is the words that Jacob repeated to Pharaoh when he's like, "The years of my life have not been as long as my father's, and they've been few and full of evil and dangers." Full of dangers and involved in great hardships. But the entrances of the greater world are broad and safe and really yield the fruit of immortality. Therefore, unless the living pass through the difficult and vain experiences, they can never receive those things that have been reserved for them. These are ruach-enhancing experiences. These are ways to draw closer to the Father. The closer you get to Him, He's a consuming fire, is He not? The closer you get to them, the hotter it is, the more stuff gets burned off of you. 2 Ezra 7, 127 through 131. He answered and said, "This is the meaning of the contest which every man who is born on earth shall wage." This is it. This is like the contest. Good, evil, light, dark, life, death, sweet, bitter. There is no gray area. It's one or the other. And this is the contest. This is the great contest. That if he is defeated, he shall suffer what you have said. And the context of that is Ezra. This is Ezra, by the way, in case you're new. Ezra wrote this, second Ezra. This was part of the Apocrypha in the 1611 KJV. Anyways, Ezra was saying, oh, everyone's going to suffer death, and none of us are perfect, and we've all sinned, and how can any of us, reach your glory? And so anyways, the angel's like, this is the meaning of the contest, that every man who is born on earth shall wage, that if he is defeated, he shall suffer what you have said. But if he is victorious, perseveres, if he is victorious, he shall receive what I have said. For this is the way of which Moses, while he was alive, spoke to the people, saying, choose for yourself life that you may live. And life is equated to walking in our Creator's commandments, also known as the Torah, or instructions for living. But they did not believe him, or the prophets after him, or even myself who have spoken to them. Therefore there shall not be grief at their destruction, so much as joy over those to whom salvation is assured. Think about the great patriarchs: Noah, David, Abraham, Moses, Aaron, Gideon. Hard times. Samson, hard times. Jephthah, Barak. These great men. Life was not easy for them. Really, the only one I could think about life was easy for was maybe Solomon, and we saw how that turned out. John 16:33. These things have I spoken to you, that you might have peace. In the world you will have tribulation. This is our Messiah speaking. In the world you will have tribulation, period. But be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. Praise Yah. Revelation 3:10-12. Because you have kept the word of my patience, I also will keep you from the hour of temptation, or trial, or tribulation, which shall come upon all the world, to try them that dwell on the earth. Behold, I come quickly. Hold fast what you have, that no man take your crown. Him that overcomes will I make a pillar in the temple of my Elohim. So just as Messiah overcame, we have to overcome the trials, the testings. Yahusha was tested. Don't believe me? That's what the word says, clearly. Hebrews 4:12. For the word of Elohim, which our Messiah is the word, he's not like we know that the scriptures are living scriptures. He's not literally like the paper and the pages in our Bible, but the words that are contained in there, that's him. But he is a living being who's ascended into the Father. For the word of Elohim is living and active and sharper than any two-edged sword, even penetrating as far as the division of soul and spirit, of both joints and marrow, and able to judge the thoughts and intentions of the heart. So obviously your Bible isn't judging the intentions of your heart, but this living being, or the word of Elohim. And there is no creature hidden from his sight, but all things are open and laid bare to the eyes of him to whom we must answer. Therefore, since we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Yahusha, the son of Elohim, let's hold firmly to our confession, for we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who has been tempted in all things just as we are, yet without sin. So Messiah was tested by everything. Everything. Hunger, thirst, probably even, you don't think that there was probably at some point some sister that walked up to him and was like, hey, how's it going? I'm not trying to be weird, but I'm just saying he was probably tempted with everything, and yet without sin. And the reason is because it's like, when you look at almost everybody, I'm sure listening here has had a job. Maybe not your children that are listening, but everyone's had a job. And you've probably, if you've been around long enough, you've probably seen at least two different types of leadership. Leadership number one, that's like, do as I say, not as I do, and go do this stuff and go do it. And the other leader that's like leads by example. Like, come, let me show you how to do this. Let me show you how to do this. And it's like leading by example. And that's Messiah. He's that good leader that was tempted with all the things that we're tempted with. So it says here that he can sympathize with us and understand. Because an Elohim that's so far off that hasn't experienced these things, how could he really sympathize with us? And that's what's so amazing about the Son of Elohim that was with our Father from the very beginning, that created the heavens and earth, made everything, made us, knows the emotions, knows the trials and testings, and he was tested himself. So really amazing. And let's obviously not forget that us in our walk, that we're tempted and tested and have to overcome like he did. 1 Corinthians 10:13, no temptation has overtaken you except something common to mankind, and Elohim is faithful. So he will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able, but with the temptation or the testing will provide the way of escape also, so that you will be able to endure it. Praise Yah. Praise Yah. Praise Yah. And keep in mind, this word of Yah, think about this. The word is alive, it's active, and we have to handle it correctly. I want to read something for you out of the book of the Nazarene, chapter 4, verse 17. One of the disciples said to Yahusha, Master, you tell us many things, and I cannot retain all your words. Surely some are better than others. Which should I store in my heart? Yahusha said, a king had 2 castles, one at each end of a wall guarding his kingdom, and he gave each of his 2 sons command over a castle. When word came that an enemy approached, he ordered his sons to collect all kinds of provender and store it. One son collected everything he could, but the other took only what he considered the best, leaving everything else. The enemy came, and both castles were besieged. The castle of one son fell when its supplies were exhausted, but the other held out by utilizing what the other had rejected. So it is with my words, even those which may seem of least value may one day prove their worth. The disciple then said, tell us where we may find Yahweh and truth. Yahusha said, you have the holy books and my words. Turning to the others, he said, this man is like a beggar who all his life stood under a fig tree. More than anything else he desired to be rich, but he remained always poor and dressed in rags. Like all men, he came to his hour, and those who buried him dug his grave at the place where he had spent his life. When the earth under the tree was opened up, it exposed a treasure of great price, gold and jewels, right under the spot where he had been begging. How easy it would have been for that man to be rich. Listen to this. This is where it gets interesting. One of those to whom Yahusha spoke said, then all we have to do is read and listen, assimilating the knowledge gained. Yahusha said, there is danger even in this. And this is why I want to pause. The reason I'm saying this is because it says here that the word of Elohim is living and active and sharper than any 2-edged sword. So we know that this is talking about Messiah, but also we are handling the word of Yah. And we know what happens if, let's say, you take a nice, big, sharp broadsword and you don't know how to use it and you start just swinging it around. Could it be dangerous to you and others? Well, yeah. So listen to this. So remember, they said that all we have to do is to read, listen, assimilating the knowledge gained. And Yahusha said, there is danger even in this. Consider a snake catcher who, going among the rocks, sees a snake well worth catching, but in his haste grabs it by the tail instead of behind the head. So it turns and bites him, causing his death. Did he die because of his calling, or because he grabbed the snake wrongly? Was he not wrong in his approach rather than in what he did? It is even so with those who know the holy books from end to end, but handle them wrongly. And that's something that I see quite a bit out there. Yahusha said, be humble in your knowledge and not puffed up, but beware of the snare of false humility. One said to him, Master, what is false humility? Yahusha said, a man was once told that if he could learn humility, he would become perfect, and, desiring perfection in himself above all else, he diligently studied everything relating to humility. Then there was nothing about it he did not know. However, one day a man said to him, what has your humility gained for you? Where have you benefited? To which the supposedly humble man replied, stupid one, what is the matter with you? For can you not see that, having learned humility, I am now a perfect man? I want to share one more thing. Hold on. There's, oh, you know what? No, you know what? Let's see. Here we go. This is what I wanted to read for you. This is also part of the trials themselves are good for us. This is the Pharisees talking to John the Baptist. And they said, then one said, no good thing ever came out of the wilderness. But Yehochanan, overhearing him, said, "Recall the days of our forefathers, when the wandering in the wilderness was over, and they came to a land where there was an abundance of milk, butter, and cheese, where the sheep grew fat and corn grew plentifully, where the vine flourished and all good things for the nurture and comfort of man were found. Then the people became weak in body, slothful, their minds turning to unclean things. They forsook the ways of Yahweh and had little respect for the teachings of the Torah, from which did they derive the most benefit? From the wilderness or from the land overflowing with good things? Pity me not for my days in the wilderness, but pity yourselves who have been denied man-making experiences." Woo! Anyways, so it's good for us. Last one, writings of Abraham, about the testing, the trials, and how they're necessary for us. This is the writings of Abraham, chapter 100. Now Melchizedek was a priest after this order, which is the holy order of Elohim. Therefore he obtained peace and shalom, and was called a prince of peace. And his people wrought righteousness and obtained heaven, for they sought for the city of Enoch, which Elohim had before taken, this New Jerusalem, separating it from the earth, having reserved it unto the latter days, or the end of the world. For Elohim had said and sworn with an oath that the heavens and the earth should come together again, and the sons of Elohim be tried by fire. That's our portion, brothers and sisters. Okay, I think we got this point pretty well. So these are the tests that Joseph went through. He went through some humiliating experiences, some hard experiences, hunger, thirst, prison, so many things. So here we go. Testament of Joseph, chapter 2. And this chief officer of Pharaoh entrusted to me his household. I struggled with a shameless woman who kept prodding me to transgress with her, but the Elohim of my father rescued me from the burning flame. I was jailed, I was whipped, I was sneered at, but Yahweh granted me mercy in the sight of the prison keeper. For Yahweh does not abandon those who fear and reverence him, neither in darkness, or chains, or tribulation, or direct need. For Elohim does not disappoint as does man, nor is he apprehensive like a son of man, nor like an earthborn is he weak or frightened away. So think about this. Those who trust in him shall lack nothing. We know that from Psalm 23, of course. But Joseph is an amazing example. Look at all these things where he probably could have just broken and just been like, Yah's not with me. How could he be with me if I'm sitting here in jail for 10 years, 12 years, and whatever. I'm falsely imprisoned, falsely sold by my brothers. How could he be with me? He didn't. He trusted in him in no matter what the circumstances. And then we see the fruit of that with Joseph's life. Again, a forerunner, a foreshadow of Messiah. Jeremiah 17, 7 through 8. Blessed is the man that trusts in Yahweh, and whose hope Yahweh is. For he shall be as a tree planted by the waters, and that spreads out her roots by the river, and shall not see when the heat comes. But her leaf shall be green, and shall not be careful in the year of drought, neither shall cease from yielding fruit. Also, likewise, we learn that Joseph, he struggled with a shameless woman who kept prodding me to transgress with her. But the Elohim of my father rescued me from the burning flame. It's because of Joseph's reverence for the Torah. Because he knew that committing adultery with Potiphar's wife is death in the sight of Yah's eyes. Psalm 1, 1-3, Blessed is the man that walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the law, the Torah of Yahweh, and in his law does he meditate day and night. And I'm here to tell you, brothers and sisters, there's a generation waking up that are like, you know what? I don't want your lies anymore. You keep telling me that the law is done away with and it's antiquated and Messiah walked in it so that I don't have to do it anymore. I'm here to tell you there's a generation that's saying, I don't want any of that because the law is good. It's amazing. Psalm 19 says it's sweeter than honey, that in keeping of it is great reward. So the person that delights and meditates on the Torah day and night, he shall be like a tree planted by the river's water that brings forth his fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither. And listen, this is Joseph embodies this, and whatever he does shall prosper. Okay, got sold into Potiphar's house. He became the chief of all of his servants. Okay, then he was falsely accused and thrown into prison. He became the chief of all the prisoners. Wherever he was, Joseph prospered because he trusted in Yah and because he reverenced the Torah of the Most High. Period. And we know that Psalm 23, Yahweh is my shepherd, I shall not want, or I lack nothing. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, and your rod and your staff, they comfort me. That's the rod of correction sometimes too. But seriously, one day we're going to get to a point where it's like no matter what comes our way, the shalom is still in our heart. And I'm starting to meet people that recognize that and are actually walking in it. And that comes from a root, trusting in him and being obedience to his Torah. The fruit of that is the shalom, the fruit of the Spirit, joy, peace, shalom, self-control, which we're going to see a lot of with Joseph here. That's how Job, after losing everything, was able to say, "Blessed be the name of Yahweh." Back to Testament of Joseph, chapter 2, verse 6. In all these matters, he takes his stand, and in various ways he offers assistance. Of course, this is Yah. Even though this verse is like one of the most important verses we're going to read tonight. Even though for a brief time he may stand aside in order to test the inclination and disposition of the soul. In another version, it says, even though he depart temporarily to test the inclination or disposition of the soul. The inclination or disposition is like, what are you going to do? It's like, what this is saying is, it's in a similar way, it's like, someone, maybe you've worked with someone who in front of their boss, they're perfect, they say the right things, they're very helpful, but when the boss is away, they're a different person. They're like, whatever. It's in a like way, it's like, what are you going to do when the boss is not looking, kind of thing. And also in a way, there's times where it feels like Yah may not be answering our prayers, because there's times where like you pray and it's like, oh, wow, thank you. And there's times you pray, you're like, oh man, are you hearing me? Because I really need you. And are you hearing me, Yah? And it says here that okay, let's read this again. So in all these matters, he takes his stand, and in various ways he offers assistance. And sometimes that assistance doesn't come in the way that we thought it would. But you're like still like, oh wow, thank you. Wow. But even though for a brief time he may stand aside or depart in order to test the inclination and disposition of the soul, he's like, what are you going to do? Where are you going to go with this? Are you going to trust me or not? This is what my word says. Are you going to trust in that? Or are you going to, or is your soul going to be swayed another way? So he may seem silent or far away sometimes, but this is for our testing. Psalm 10:1. And this is David, the heart of David. Why do you stand so far off, O Yahweh? Why do you hide yourself in times of trouble? So even with David, it's like, are you hearing me? Are you there? Yah, please listen to me. Psalm 22, 1-3. My Elohim, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from helping me in the words of my roaring? So in this, obviously we know that this is a foreshadow of Messiah on the cross, but in a greater sense, this is that groaning, like, oh Yah, why are you far from me? Answer me, hear me. Oh, my Elohim, I cry in the daytime, but you hear not, and in the night season, and I am not silent. And he's going to say, forget you. No, but you are holy, and you inhabit the praises of Israel. So I'm going to praise you no matter what. Psalm 13 embodies this. How long will you forget me, O Yahweh? Forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long shall I take counsel in my soul, having sorrow in my heart daily? How long shall my enemy be exalted over me? Consider and hear me, O Yahweh. Lighten my eyes, lest I sleep the sleep of death. Lest my enemies say, I have prevailed against him, and those that trouble me rejoice when I am moved. So this is like, are you there? Are you listening? And this is what we do. No matter what, but I have trusted in your mercy, and my heart shall rejoice in your salvation. I will sing unto Yahweh, because he has dealt bountifully with me. Hallelujah. Praise Yah. We'll actually sing this psalm later. We have a song of Psalm 13. But that's the heart of it. He may depart for a moment. What are you going to do with it? He's going to be like, what are you going to do? And in like manner, Psalm 32:9 says, do not be like the horse or like the mule, which have no understanding, whose trappings include bit and bridle to hold them in check. So, like, think about this. So, like a horse, a mule, they need to put a bit in their mouth, and so you can tell them exactly where to go. And he's like, do I need to really be like that? Do I have to put a bit in your mouth and turn you each way? When are you going to be trained so that you know the way of good and evil, and not go the way of evil, of course, but go the way of good only? So he says, don't be like that, where I have to always be like, go here, go here, go here. No. He wants to train us. Jeremiah 31 says he trains us. We were like an untrained calf, but he chastened us and he trained us to bear the yoke correctly. The yoke of the Torah, that is, of course. He wants to see what you'll do. What are you going to do? Testament of Joseph 2, verse 7, in 10 testings, so just like Abraham, in 10 testings he showed that I was approved, and in all of them I persevered, because perseverance is a powerful medicine, and endurance provides many good things. Perseverance, endurance, overcoming. This is our lot. This is our portion. This is what we have to do. 2 Peter 1, 5 through 8. Now for this very reason also, applying all diligence in your faith, supply moral excellence, and in your moral excellence, knowledge, and in your knowledge, self-control, and in your self-control, perseverance. You know, hopefully we all know the word of perseverance. It's like pushing through. Even when it's hard, you keep going. You don't quit. And in your perseverance, godliness. And this is part of the parable of the seed. It says that the seed, some of it grew up and it was choked by the cares of the world, or one suffered because of, suffer persecution because of the word, and by they are offended and fall away. That's the opposite of perseverance. Perseverance is pushing through that. So in your self-control, perseverance, and in your perseverance, godliness, and in your godliness, brotherly kindness, and in your brotherly kindness, love. For if these qualities are yours and are increasing, they do not make you useless nor unproductive in the true knowledge of our Master, Yahushua HaMashiach. Luke 21:19, by your endurance, or in other translations, perseverance, you will gain your lives. That's eternal lives, of course. Luke 8:11 through 15. Now this is a parable. The seed is the word of Elohim, and those beside the road are the ones who have heard. Then the devil comes and takes away the word from their heart, so that they will not believe and be saved. Those on rocky soil are the ones who, when they hear, receive the word with joy, and yet these do not have a firm root. Remember, we were talking about that firm root earlier. That's the whole parable about Jeremiah 17 and Psalm 1. The trust and the obedience, that's the root, that if you do these things, you're like a tree planted by the rivers of water that always, its leaf is always nice and yummy and tender, and the fruit is always abounding. That's how we're supposed to be like. So these are the rocky soil, the ones who, when they hear, receive the word with joy. It's like, oh yeah, the truth, the Torah, this makes sense, the Sabbath, yeah. And yet these do not have a firm root, and they believe for a while, and in a time of temptation or testing, like Abraham, Joseph, Moses, Yahusha, they don't fall away, but how like everyone is tested, but certain people fall away. That's, of course, these people whose rocky soil. And the seed which fell among the thorns, these are the ones who have heard, and as they go on their way, they are choked by worries, riches, and pleasures of this life, and they bring no fruit to maturity. But the seed in the good soil, these are the ones who have heard the word with a good and virtuous heart, and hold it firmly, and produce fruit with perseverance. Think about those plants outside, you gardeners. Is the weather always perfect? No. How about that wind that pushes that plant back and forth? You gardeners out there, and maybe even you novices out there, or think about this. You have two exact plants in two different areas, plant A and plant B. Plant A, it's always perfect weather. No hard rains, just always nice, soft, tender rain. No winds, it's never shaken about. And then you have plant B that it's endured the hard rains, it's endured the heavy winds, of course, not enough to rip it up, but winds enough, just like we read earlier in 1 Corinthians 10 that, we'll never have a trial that's above our abilities. So plant B, of course, it's got the wind, it's got the heavier rain, And so you have these two plants. Which one is sturdier? Which one has firmer roots? Which one is stronger? Of course, plant B. And what if that massive wind comes? Plant A is going to get knocked out because it's hasn't had those trials. It hasn't had that even the ability to prove its perseverance, where plant B was able to prove its perseverance. And that is the reason for these trials. He doesn't know what you're made of or none of us know what we're made of until we're put to the fire, until we're put to these trials. And that's why they're here. And one day we'll learn to embrace them and say, thank you. Thank you for these trials. Instead of being bitter and be like, why isn't my life perfect? So-and-so's life just seems perfect. And that's another snare of social media. You get these highlight reels of people's life, and it makes you think, well, everybody's living a perfect life except for me. Anyways. All right. But perseverance is running the race with patience. I used to be a runner. My sport in high school was wrestling. I loved wrestling, and on the off season, I wanted to stay fit and with good endurance, because wrestling requires perseverance, endurance. It's like it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, as far as physically, way harder than Marine Corps, in my opinion. But anyways, I was a runner, and I was a long distance runner for that. I did cross country, and in track I did the mile and the 2 mile. Anyways, there was this runner that would just dart off fast, like way ahead of the pack, and would eventually lose steam and usually ended up in last or close to last place. And running out fast is not a bad thing, but it's the endurance, the perseverance that wins the long race. And our walk is like the long distance race. Let's read Sirach 12 through 14. It says, "Woe to timid hearts and slack hands, and the sinner who walks along two ways. Woe to the faint heart, for it has no trust. Therefore it will not be sheltered." So if we become faint of heart during these trials, like, oh, you don't love me, I can't do this, my life was easier. I was thinking about this the other day. My life before this walk was easier physically. Like, it was just easier. Like, I worked, depending on what stage of my life it was, got in my boat, or got on my motorcycle, or got in my fast car, or went to Buffalo Wild Wings and ate my wings and watched my football and sipped on my beer or whatever, or in different phase of my life just went home and played video games and just vegged out for whatever. Like, that was just easy, but in my mind it was hard. It was rough. It was like I was missing something, and I didn't know what it was, and I couldn't scratch that itch. I couldn't put enough band-aids on my life for me to be like, why am I like miserable? I have everything I want. Why am I miserable? Anyways, this life is hard. So in this walk that we have now, it's hard. I'm not going to lie. This last 6 months has probably been the hardest of my life. And I'm just sharing with you of what it's like. It's hard. In your mind and in your ruach, I lack nothing. And that's what these trials, that's what perseverance teaches us. And that's what Peter was saying earlier, that it's like a chain thing. It's like a stair-stepping thing. Diligence, faith, morality, knowledge, self-control, perseverance, godliness, brotherly kindness. It's like these things. It's a chain reaction. Anyways, so back to Sirach. It says, "Woe to the faint at heart, for it has no trust. Therefore it will not be sheltered. Woe to you who have lost your endurance. What will you do when Yahweh punishes you? Run the race with patience." That's what Paul says in one verse somewhere. I didn't pull it up but I think most of you know it. That we're supposed to run the race with patience. So even though this life is hard, I'm here to tell you as a witness that even though our life is hard in this walk, that's how it's supposed to be. It's good for us, and it refines us, and it's preparing us for the return of Messiah. Because even though my former life was easier in day-to-day actions, In my mind, it was hard. In my soul, it was hard. I hated it. Now my life's harder in the day-to-day things, but in my mind and in my ruach, there's shalom. That it's like no matter what comes, there's shalom. And earlier in this passage, it really relates to Joseph here. It says, "My son, if you come forward to serve Yahweh, prepare yourself for temptations or trials or tribulations. Set your heart aright and be steadfast, and do not be hasty in time of calamity." Steadfast is really, it's not directly related, but it reminds me of endurance. To be steadfast is to be firm. To endure, to have endurance or perseverance is like being steadfast. And do not be hasty in time of calamity. Oh, you don't love me. Where are you? You said that. Cleave to him and do not depart, that you may be honored at the end of your life, just like Joseph was. Listen to this. This is a hard verse to accept, but we need to accept whatever is brought upon you, and in changes that humble you, be patient. Look at Joseph. He was humbled, and he accepted whatever was brought up before him. For gold is tested in the fire, and acceptable men in the furnace of humiliation. Trust in him, and he will help you. Make your way straight and hope in him. Wise words. Wow. In any case, let's keep going. So again, it says, in 10 testings, he showed that I was approved, and in all of them, I persevered. He pushed through. He had endurance, because perseverance is a powerful medicine, and endurance provides many good things. Let's run the race with patience. Chapter 3 of the Testament of Joseph. How often the Egyptian woman threatened me with death. How often, after turning me over to the tormentors, she would call me back and threaten me. This is Potiphar's wife that wanted to lie with him. But since I was unwilling to have intercourse with her, she kept saying to me, "You will be master over me and all my household if you will only give yourself over to me. Then you will be our ruler." But I recalled my father's words. What do you think his father's words were? The instructions, the Torah. So I recalled my father's words and went weeping into my quarters and prayed to Yahweh. The tests, the trials, the temptations are going to come. What are you going to do? What will you do with those times? Matthew 4. Let's look at our greatest example, our Messiah. When the devil came and tempted. Matthew 4, 3 through 11. And when the tempter came to him, he said, "If you be the son of Elohim, command that these stones be made bread." But he answered and said, "It is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of Elohim." So, the testings came upon Joseph, and what did he do? He recalled his father's words. May have been directly from Jacob, but the father's words are from Messiah, are from the Father. That's what Messiah did. He reverted to his father's word. The devil takes him up to the holy city and set him on a pinnacle of the temple and said unto him, "If you be the son of Elohim, cast yourself down. For it is written, he shall give his angels charge concerning you, and in their hands they shall bear you up, lest at any time you should dash your foot against a stone." Yahushua said unto him, "It is written again, you shall not tempt Yahweh your Elohim." He turned to the word. Again, the devil takes him up to an exceeding high mountain and shows him all the kingdoms of the world and the glory of them, and said unto him, "All these things will I give you, if you will fall down and worship me." Then said Yahushua unto him, "Get thee hence, Satan." I love the KJV sometimes. "Get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, you shall worship Yahweh your Elohim, and him only shall you serve." He turned to the word. Then the devil left him, and behold, angels came and ministered unto him. So when these temptations come to us, turn to the word. Again, 1 Corinthians 10:13, there has no temptation taken you, but as such is common to man. But Elohim is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that you are able, but will with the temptation also make a way to escape, that you may be able to bear it. It's like there's always a choice. It reminds me back in my early teen years, during my reading time, I kind of liked those choose your own adventure books where it's like you come to a fork in the road. Do you go left down the path where the cave is, or do you go to the right with the river? Whatever. But the point is like there's always a choice. And I think in these temptations, these trials, there's always a choice to make. And there's a way to either fall into the temptation or there's a way to escape it. And I think the word of Yah is what we turn to in almost everything. Does the word have an explanation for every single particular scenario in our lives? Maybe not. Are there things that are close? Probably. But nevertheless, even when it's not clear, we turn to him. We turn to our Heavenly Father. We pray to our Heavenly Father in the name of our Messiah, the high priest who would offer these prayers before him. Just something to consider. So again, the point is this severe temptation that came across Joseph, and we're going to read more in depth. It's really cool and interesting that our Torah portions are kind of lining up with this testament of Joseph, that our Torah portions are all about Joseph right now. But we get a small little snippet about how Potiphar's wife tried to trip up Joseph. We're going to read a much deeper story about all the tricks that she had up her sleeve to try to get him to do that. But every time he recalled his father's words and went weeping to his quarters and prayed to Yahweh. That's how we battle, is the word and prayer. That's our two main weapons, period. So we turn to the word. All right, Testament of Joseph, chapter 3, verse 4. For those 7 years I fasted, and yet seemed to the Egyptians like someone who was living luxuriously. He didn't like not eat for 7 years. We'll see a little bit later that he'd fast for a couple days at a time each week. For those 7 years I fasted, and yet seemed to the Egyptians like someone who was living luxuriously. For those who fast for the sake of Elohim receive graciousness of countenance. So his appearance. If my master was absent, I drank no wine. For 3-day periods I would take no food, but give it to the poor and the ill. I would awaken early and pray to Yahweh, weeping over the Egyptian woman of Memphis, because she troubled me exceedingly and relentlessly. In the night she would come into me, pretending a mere visit, because she had no male child. She pretended to regard me as a son. For a time she would embrace me as a son, but then I realized later that she was trying to lure me into fornication. When I became aware of this, I lamented to the point of death. After she had gone out, I came to myself and mourned in her behalf for many days, because I had recognized her deceit and her deviousness. I declared to her the words of the Most High, hoping he might divert her from the evil desire. So again, he turned to the word. How often then did she flatter me with words as a holy man, deceitfully praising my self-control through her words in the presence of her husband, but when we were alone, she sought to seduce me. It's kind of what I was saying earlier. When the master's away or the boss is away, how are you going to act? Publicly, she honored me for my self-control, while privately she said to me, have no fear of my husband, for he is convinced of your chastity, so that even if someone were to tell him about you, he would not believe it. I want to read a passage for you. Proverbs 6:20-29. My son, keep your father's commandment, and forsake not the Torah of your mother. Bind them continually upon the heart, and tie them about your neck. When you go, it shall lead you. When you sleep, it shall keep you. And when you awake, it shall talk with you. For the commandment is a lamp, and the Torah is light, and reproofs of instruction are the way of life. Listen to this. To keep you from the evil woman, from the flattery of the tongue of a strange woman. Lust not after her beauty in your heart, neither let her take you with her eyelids. For by means of a whorish woman a man is brought to a piece of bread, and the adulteress will hunt for the precious life, just like Potiphar's wife was. Can a man take fire in the bosom, and his clothes not be burned? Can one go upon the hot coals, and his feet not be burned? So he that goes into his neighbor's wife, whosoever touches her, shall not be innocent. So Joseph knew these things, and he kept away from her. In another passage in the Proverbs, it talks about the adulterer, how he goes in and the room is dark, and he's like, no one sees me. But he doesn't know that the eyes of Yahweh are 1,000 or 10,000 times brighter than the sun. Nothing escapes him. Shall the one who made the eye not be able to see, or the one who made the ears not be able to hear? And it says he's also a discerner of the heart. So he even knows if you're lusting after a woman. And that's why Messiah came to say it's not just enough not to commit adultery, but not lusting after your neighbor's wife. So, okay, let's back to Testament of Joseph, chapter 4, verse 3. During all these affairs, I stretched out on the ground, praying to Elohim to rescue me from her treachery. So are you just totally distraught in something? How about this? Lay on the ground, pray to Elohim, prostrate yourself before him. When she achieved nothing by means of it, she began to approach me for instruction so that she might learn the word of Elohim. And she kept saying to me, if you want me to abandon the idols, have intercourse with me, and I shall persuade my husband to put away the idols, and we shall walk in the Torah of your Elohim. But I kept telling her that Yahweh did not want worshippers who come by means of uncleanness, nor would he be pleased with adulterers, but with those who were pure in heart and undefiled in speech. Nevertheless, she was consumed with jealousy, wanting to fulfill her desire. But I devoted myself the more to fasting and prayer that Yahweh might rescue me from her. Again, on another occasion, she said to me, if you do not want to commit adultery, I shall kill my husband by a drug and take you as my husband. When I heard this, I tore my clothing and said to her, woman, show reverence to Elohim. Do not commit this wicked deed, lest you be utterly destroyed. For you should know that I shall make it known to all that this is your scheme. Filled with fear, she pleaded with me not to disclose her plan. Then she withdrew, but kept trying to entice me with gifts and every manner of pleasurable things. These are more part of his tests. And we have to be careful. And this is gifts are a test. Gift of itself is not evil, but the intentions of the gift can be impure and can lead to wrongful things. Sirach 20:29. Presents and gifts blind the eyes of the wise. Like a muzzle on the mouth, they avert reproofs, or make you to the point where you can't reprove somebody because of the gifts they give. So we have to understand the intentions of a gift and make sure that it's not for deceitful means. Testament of Joseph, chapter 6. Later she sent me food mixed with enchantments. When the eunuch who was carrying it arrived, I looked up and saw a frightening man who offered me a sword along with the bowl. So I perceived it was a trick to lead me astray. When he departed, I wept. I tasted neither one item nor the other of the food he brought. A day later she came to me and said, when she recognized the food, why didn't you eat the food? And I said to her, because you filled it with a deadly enchantment. How can you say, I do not go near idols, but only to Yahweh? Now then understand that the Elohim of my father revealed to me through an angel your wickedness, but I have kept it for this reason, to shame you if somehow by seeing it you might repent. In order for you to learn that the evil of the ungodly will not triumph over those who exercise self-control in their worship of Elohim, I will take this and eat it in your presence. When I had said that, I prayed aloud, may the Elohim of my fathers and the angel of Abraham be with me. And I ate, and when she saw this, she fell upon her face at my feet weeping. I raised her up and warned her, and she agreed with me that she should no longer commit this impiety. This reminded me of a passage in the Wisdom of Solomon that I wanted to share that were related to this, in order that you may learn that the evil of the ungodly will not triumph over those who exercise self-control of their worship in Elohim. Basically, that the righteous are going to be victorious in the end. Let's see. Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 1, verse 16 through 3:13. This is life as the ungodly see it, but ungodly men by their words and deeds summon death. Considering him a friend, they pined away, and they made a covenant with him, because they are fit to belong to his party, death, of course. For they reasoned unsoundly, saying to themselves, short and sorrowful is our life, and there is no remedy when a man comes to his end, and no one has been known to return from Hades. Because we were born by mere chance, sounds a lot like evolution, or Big Bang Theory, because we were born by mere chance, and hereafter we shall be as though we had never been. So it's like you live, you die, and that's it. The YOLO, which is obviously wrong. Because the breath in our nostrils is smoke, and reason is a spark kindled by the beating of our hearts. When it is extinguished, the body will turn to ashes, and the spirit will dissolve like empty air. Our name will be forgotten in time, and no one will remember our works. Our life will pass away like the traces of a cloud, and be scattered like mist, that is chased by the rays of the sun and overcome by its heat. For our allotted time is the passing of a shadow, and there is no return from our death, because it is sealed up and no one turns back. Come, therefore, Let us enjoy the good things that exist, and make use of the creation to the full as in youth. Let us take our fill of costly wine and perfumes, and let no flower of spring pass by us. Let us crown ourselves with rosebuds before they wither. Let none of us fail to share in our revelry. Everywhere let us leave signs of our enjoyment, because this is our portion and this is our lot. This is all still words of the ungodly. Let us oppress the righteous poor man. Let us not spare the widow, nor regard the gray hairs of the aged. But let our might be our law of right. For what is weak proves itself to be useless. Let us lie in wait for the righteous man, because he is inconvenient to us and opposes our actions. He reproaches us for our sins against the law, and accuses us of sins against our training. He professes to have knowledge of Elohim and calls himself a child of Yahweh. He became to us a reproof of our thoughts. The very sight of him is a burden to us, because his manner of life is unlike that of others, and his ways are strange. We are considered by him as something base, and he avoids our ways as unclean. He calls the last end of the righteous happy, and boasts that Elohim is his father. Let us see if his words are true, and let us test what will happen at the end of his life. For if the righteous man is Elohim's son, he will help him, and will deliver him from the hand of his adversaries. Reminds me a lot of Psalm 22. Let us test him with insult and torture, that we might find out how gentle he is, and make trial of his forbearance. Let us condemn him to a shameful death, for according to what he says, he will be protected. Thus they reasoned, but they were led astray, for their wickedness blinded them, and they did not know the secret purposes of Elohim, nor hope for the wages of holiness, nor discern the prize for the blameless souls. For Elohim created man for incorruption, and made him in the image of his own eternity. But through the devil's envy, death entered the world. Remember the very first words of Joseph here. In my life I have seen envy and death. But through the devil's envy, death entered the world, and those who belong to his party experience it. Now, the destiny of the righteous. Chapter 3. But the souls of the righteous are in the hand of Elohim, and no torment will ever touch them. In the eyes of the foolish they seem to have died, and their departure was thought to be an affliction, and their going from us to be their destruction. But they are at peace. For though in the sight of men they were punished, their hope is full of immortality. Having been disciplined a little, they will receive great good, because Elohim tested them and found them worthy of himself. Again, we don't know who we are until we're tested. Like gold in the furnace he tried them, and like a sacrificial burnt offering he accepted them. In the time of their visitation they will shine forth, and will run like sparks through the stubble. They will govern the nations and rule over peoples, and Yahweh will reign over them forever. Those who trust in him will understand truth, and the faithful will abide with him in love, because grace and mercy are upon his elect, and he watches over his holy ones. But the ungodly will be punished as their reasoning deserves, who disregard the righteous man and rebelled against Yahweh. For whoever despises wisdom and instruction is miserable. That's what I was trying to share with you earlier. My former life, though it seemed easy, my day-to-day things, miserable. Why? Because I despised wisdom and instruction, Yah's ways. I walked contrary to it. I was miserable. Their hope is vain, and their labors are unprofitable, and their works are useless. Boy, did I live that. Their wives are foolish, and their children evil. Their offspring are accursed. For blessed is the barren woman who is undefiled, who has not entered into a sinful union. She will have fruit when Elohim examines the soul. So, let's go to chapter 7 of Yosef. But her heart was still inclined to evil, and she turned over in her mind how she might entrap me. Shortly she was sighing deeply and depressed, even though she was not sick. When her husband saw her, he said to her, "Why are you so downcast?" She responded to him, "I am suffering from a pain in my heart, and groans of my spirit have taken hold of me." He tried to cure her with words. Then she seized the occasion and came running into me, while her husband was still outside, and said to me, "I shall hang myself, or hurl myself over the cliff if you will not lie with me." Since I perceived that the spirit of Beliar or Satan was troubling her, I prayed to Yahweh. But I said to her, "Why, wretched woman, are you troubled and disturbed and blinded by sin? Remember that if you kill yourself, astetha, Your husband's concubine, who is filled with envy of you, will beat your children, and thus you will destroy your memory from the earth." And she said, "See, then you do love me. That's enough. Only keep contending for my life and that of my children, and I shall cling to my expectation of gaining my desire." She did not understand that I spoke it in this way for my master's sake and not for hers. For if anyone is subjected to the passion of desire and is enslaved by it, as she was, even when he hears something good, he receives it with a view to aid his wicked desire. So it's like, oh, confirmation that, this is right, or this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And we've learned this through the testament of Reuben, Simeon, Gad, that these spirits blind you figuratively that you can't even see correctly. I want to read a little bit from the Testament of Judah, chapter 3, at least the online version, chapter 3, verses 10 through 30, about the person who is subjected to the passion of desire and enslaved by it. We read about this in the Testament of Judah weeks ago, but let's do it again. "And now, my children, I say to you, be not drunk with wine, for wine turns the mind away from the truth," the Torah, "and inspires the passion of lust, and leads the eyes into error. For the spirit of fornication has wine as a minister to give pleasure to the mind. For these two also take away the mind of a man. For if a man drink wine to drunkenness, it disturbs the mind with filthy thoughts leading to fornication, and heats the body to carnal union. And if the occasion of the lust be present, he works the sin, and is not ashamed. Such is the inebriated man, my children. For he who is drunken reverences no man. For lo, it made me also to err, so that I was not ashamed of the multitude in the city, and that before the eyes of all I turned aside unto Tamar, and I wrought a great sin, and I uncovered the covering of my son's shame. After I had drunk wine, I reverenced not the commandment of Elohim, and I took a woman of Canaan to wife. For much discretion needs the man who drinks wine, my children, and herein is discretion in drinking wine. A man may drink so long as he preserves modesty. But if he go beyond this limit, the spirit of deceit attacks his mind, and it makes the drunkard to talk filthily, and to transgress, and not to be ashamed, and even to glory in his shame, and to account himself honorable. He that commits fornication is not aware when he suffers loss, and is not ashamed when is put to dishonor. For even though a man be a king and commit fornication, he is stripped of his kingship by becoming the slave of fornication. This is what Joseph was talking about. For if anyone is subjected to the passion of desire and is enslaved by it, so by becoming the slave of fornication, as I myself also suffered. For I gave my staff, that is the stay of my tribe, and my girdle, that is my power, and my diadem, that is the glory of my kingdom. And indeed I repented of these things. Wine and flesh I eat not until my old age, nor did I behold any joy. And the angel of Elohim showed me that forever do women bear rule over king and beggar alike. And from the king they take away his glory, and from the valiant man his might, and from the beggar even that little which is the stay of his poverty. Observe therefore, my children, the right limit in wine, for there are in it 4 evil spirits, of lust, of hot desire, of profligacy, of filthy lucre. If you drink wine in gladness, be ye modest in the fear of Elohim. So this is talking about self-control, of course, which Joseph clearly demonstrates in his life. For if in your gladness the fear of Elohim departs, then drunkenness arises and shamelessness steals in. But if you would live soberly, do not touch wine at all, lest ye sin in words of outrage, and in fightings and in slanders and transgressions of the commandments of Elohim, and ye perish before your time. Moreover, wine reveals the mysteries of Elohim and men, even as I also revealed the commandments of Elohim and the mysteries of Jacob my father to the Canaanitish woman Bathshua, which Elohim bade me not to reveal. And wine is a cause of both war and confusion. And now I command you, my children, not to love money, nor to gaze upon the beauty of women, because for the sake of money and beauty I was led astray to Bathshua the Canaanite. So, just another witness here about someone being subjected to the passion of desire and enslaved by it. As she was, even when he hears something good, he receives it with a view to aid his wicked desire. Chapter 8. I tell you, my children, it was about the 6th hour when she left me. Bending my knees before Yahweh, I prayed a whole day and a whole night. Toward dawn I arose, crying and begging deliverance from her. Finally, she grasped my clothing, determined to force me into having intercourse with her. When I saw, therefore, that in her madness she had seized my garment, I left it and fled naked. She held on to it and brought false accusation against me. Her husband came and threw me in prison in his own house. Then the next day he whipped me and sent me to Pharaoh's prison. You know, it's interesting. I always wondered, like, if someone was caught in those days with adultery or the intention of committing adultery, they would just be put to death. In the book of Jasher, we have the explanation of exactly how this went down. Chapter 44, verses 69 through 76. I want to read this for you. And Potiphar took Joseph and ordered him to be brought to justice before the priests, who were judges belonging to the king, in order to judge him according concerning this affair. And Potiphar and Joseph came before the priests, who were the king's judges. And he said to them, Decide, I pray you, what judgment is due to a servant, for thus has he done. And the priests said unto Joseph, Why did you do this thing to your master? And Joseph answered them, saying, Not so, my masters. Thus was the matter. And Potiphar said unto Joseph, Surely I entrusted in your hands all that belongs to me, and I withheld nothing from you but my wife. How could you do this evil? And Joseph answered, saying, Not so, my master. As Yahweh lives, and as your soul lives, my master, the word which you did hear from your wife is untrue, for thus was the affair this day. And so Joseph was telling his side. A year has elapsed to me since I have been in your house. Have you seen any iniquity in me, or anything which might cause you to demand my life? And the priest said unto Potiphar, Send, we pray you, and let them bring before us Joseph's torn garment, and let us see the tear in it. And if it shall be that the tear is in the front of the garment, then his face must have been opposite to her, and she must have caught hold of him to come to her, and with deceit did your wife do all that she has spoken. And they brought Joseph's garment before the priests, who were judges, and they saw, and behold, the tear was in front of Joseph. And all the judging priests knew that she had pressed him. And they said, The judgment of death is not due to the slave, for he has done nothing. But his judgment is that he be placed in the prison house on account of the report which through him has gone forth against your wife. So he was basically put away as a prisoner, so that Potiphar's wife wouldn't be put to shame. And Potiphar heard their words, and he placed him in the prison house, the place where the king's prisoners are confined. And Joseph was in the house of confinement 12 years. So, chapter 8, verse 5, When I was in fetters, the Egyptian woman was overtaken with grief. She came and heard the report of how I gave thanks to Yahweh, and sang praises in the house of darkness, and how I rejoiced with cheerful voice, glorifying my Elohim, because I was set free from this Egyptian woman. Chapter 9, Many times she sent messages to me, saying, Acquiesce in fulfilling my desire, and I will release you from the fetters and liberate you from the darkness. Not even in my mind did I yield to her, for Elohim loves him who in a den of wickedness combines fasting with chastity, rather than the man who in king's chambers combines luxury with license. So just as we're supposed to be a light in a dark place and not to partake of the darkness, even though the darkness is all around us. Revelation 18:4. Then I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, lest you take part in her sins, lest you share in her plagues. Come out of the darkness into Yahweh's marvelous light. Likewise, the reward for the 144,000 and the great multitude, as shown here in 2 Ezra chapter 2, verses 35 through 40, says this, Be ready for the rewards of the kingdom, because the eternal light will shine upon you forevermore. Flee from the shadow or the darkness of this age. Receive the joy of your glory. I publicly call on my Savior to witness. Receive what Yahweh has entrusted to you, and be joyful, giving thanks to him who has called you to heavenly kingdoms. Rise and stand and see at the feast of Yahweh the number of those who have been sealed, those who have departed from the darkness or the shadow of this age, and have received glorious garments from Yahweh. Take again your full number, O Zion, and conclude the list of your people who are clothed in white, who have fulfilled the law or the Torah of Yahuwah. Praise Yah. So, not even in my mind did I yield to her. For Elohim, listen to this, for Elohim loves him who in a den of wickedness combines fasting with chastity. So even like Daniel in Babylon, in a place of wickedness, kept himself from that darkness and remained in Yahweh's light. So rather than the man who in king's chambers combines luxury with license. If a man strives for self-control and at the same time desires glory, and the Most High knows that it is appropriate for him, he brings it about for him, even as he did for me. How often, as though she were ill, she came down at odd hours and listened to my voice as I prayed. For when I was aware of her groaning, I fell silent. For when I had been with her in her house, she would bare her arms, thighs, and breasts, so that I might lie with her. For she was wholly beautiful and splendidly decked out to entice me. But Yahweh protected me from her manipulations. And think about this. In a like way, we have a lot of challenges like Joseph here in that. And think about this. Think about the world we live in right now, of all the trials and the temptations and the way women dress and what's on television. Not that we should be watching television and movies and TV shows and things like that, but all the world around us is all positioned to entice us. Like, don't you want this? Don't you want that? This is at your fingertips. So is this. I've said before, the internet is a two-edged sword. It can be used for great things. I mean, look at the kind of studies we can do right now with technology and the ability. We can take one Hebrew word and look how it was used every time to get a full depth. And the internet can also be used for a lot of evil. Think about all the wicked things it can be used for. I don't even want to get into all of them right now. But we're living in an age of extreme temptations. And this is something that if you struggle with, there's a video that I would love for you to examine. It's called Breaking Lusts. Just search Breaking Lusts, Parable of the Vineyard, and it's a green thumb. It'll pull up. But this is something to keep in mind in your prayers, because if you struggle with these things, there's a passage in the book of Elijah that says, if we were honest in admitting our weaknesses before him, he could turn our weaknesses into strengths. Psalm 119:37 says this, turn away my eyes from beholding vanity and quicken you me in the way. So turn my eyes from beholding vain things. So I don't want to look at vanity anymore. I don't want to consider and contemplate these vain things. I don't want them to enter into my mind. These are the things I believe that he would hear our prayers and bless us. So we're going to read a bit now. This is, I'm just going to read a couple chapters here. So you see, my children, how great are the things that patience and prayer with fasting accomplishes. What a great combo. You also, if you pursue self-control and purity with patience, remember that endurance, that perseverance, and prayer with fasting and humility of heart, Yahweh will dwell among you because he loves self-control. And where the Most High dwells, even if envy befalls someone, or slavery or slander, Yahweh who dwells with him on account of his self-control not only will rescue him from these evils, but will exalt him and glorify him as he did for me. Remember we read Sirach earlier? And in trials that humble you, be patient. For these problems beset all mankind, either in deed or word or in thought. For my brothers knew how much my father loved me, yet I was not puffed up in my thoughts. Even while I was a child, I had the fear or reverence of Elohim in my heart, for I understood that all things pass away. I did not arouse myself with evil intent, but honored my brothers. And out of regard for them, even when they sold me, I was silent, rather than tell the Ishmaelites that I was the son of Jacob, a great and righteous man, because he wanted to protect and cover his brothers. Chapter 11, you therefore, my children, in every act keep the reverence of Elohim before your eyes and honor your brothers. For everyone who does the Torah of Yahweh will be loved by him. As I was going with the Ishmaelites, they kept asking me, are you a slave? And I replied, I am a homeborn slave, so as not to disgrace my brothers. Think about that. The greatest of them said to me, you are not a slave. Even your appearance discloses that. But I told them that I was a slave. As we were reaching Egypt, they began to squabble over me as to which of them would put up the money and take me. Accordingly, it seemed good to all of them that I should be left in Egypt with a trader handling their trading post until they returned bringing their merchandise. Yahweh granted me favor in the eyes of the trader, and he entrusted me with his household. And Elohim blessed him by my hand, and he prospered in gold and silver and in business. And I was with him 3 months and 5 days. Chapter 12. At that time, the Memphian woman, Potiphar's wife, came down in a plannikin. You've seen those. That's where there's 4 posts and 4 people carry the chariot, basically, or this covered box with that's decked with gold and whatever. Potiphar's wife came down in a plannikin with great splendor because she had heard about me from one of her eunuchs. She said to her husband that through a certain young Hebrew, the traitor had become rich, just much like how Laban prospered just because Jacob was there. They say that he surely stole him out of the land of Canaan. Now then, work justice concerning him. Take the young man to your household, and the Elohim of the Hebrews will bless you, because grace from heaven is with him. Chapter 13. Potiphar believed her words and ordered the traitor to come and said to him, What is this that I hear about you, that you steal persons from the land of Canaan and sell them as slaves? The traitor fell at his feet and besought him, saying, I pray you, my master, I do not know what you are saying. Potiphar said to him, Where is this Hebrew from then? And he said, The Ishmaelites left him with me until they return. But he did not believe the traitor and ordered that he be stripped and beaten. But since he persisted in his statements, Potiphar said, Bring in the young man. And when I entered, I prostrated myself before Potiphar, for he was third in rank among Pharaoh's officers. And taking me aside from the traitor, he said to me, Are you a slave or a free man? I said to him, A slave. He said, Of whom? I replied, Of the Ishmaelites. He said, How did you become a slave? And I said, They bought me out of the land of Canaan. But he said to me, You are lying. And immediately he ordered that I also be stripped and whipped. Chapter 14. The Memphian woman was watching through the doors as they beat me, for her residence was nearby. So she sent a message to him, Your sentence is unjust, because you have punished as a wrongdoer someone who, though a free man, was stolen. But since I did not change my statement while they were beating me, he ordered me to be imprisoned until, he said, the masters of the servant boy arrive. But the woman said to her husband, Why do you detain in bonds this young man, though a captive is well born? Rather, he should be set free and attended to be by my servants. She wanted to see me by reason of her sinful passion, but I was ignorant of all these things. He said to her, It is not proper for Egyptians to take away what belongs to others before the evidence has been presented. He said this concerning the traitor, but the young man he kept incarcerated. 24 days later the Ishmaelites came, and they had heard that Jacob my father was mourning greatly over me. And they came and told me, Why did you tell us that you were a slave? Look, we now know that you are the son of a great man in the land of Canaan, and that your father is mourning for you in sackcloth and ashes. When I heard this, my inner being was dissolved, and my heart melted, and I wanted to weep very much, but I restrained myself so as not to bring disgrace on my brothers. Look at what he does for the love of his brothers. So I said to them, I know nothing. I am a slave. Then they conferred about selling me so that I might not be discovered in bondage to them, for they feared my father, that he might come and avenge himself powerfully against them. They had heard that he was a great person in the sight of Elohim and men. Then the traitor said to them, Release me from Potiphar's judgment. So they came and requested of me, Say that you were purchased by us with money, and then he will release us from responsibility. The Memphian woman said to her husband, Buy the young man, for I hear it said that they are selling him. Immediately she sent a eunuch to the Ishmaelites, requesting them to sell me. But the eunuch was not willing to buy me and came away after testing them out. He told his mistress that they were asking a great deal of money for the boy. She sent the eunuch back again and told him, Even if they were asking 2 minas, offer it. Do not be sparing of the gold. Just buy the boy and bring him to me. The eunuch went and gave them 80 pieces of gold and took me away. But he told the Egyptian woman he had paid 100. Although I knew the facts, I kept quiet in order not to bring the eunuch under disgrace. Listen to this. So you see, my children, how many things I endured in order not to bring my brothers into disgrace. Do you also, therefore, love one another, and with long-suffering hide one another's faults. There's a time for correction, and there's a time for covering. And we need to know the difference between the two, and when it's time for what. Proverbs 17:9, He that covers a transgression seeks love, but he that repeats a matter separates very friends. John 13:34, A new commandment I give unto you, that you love one another as I have loved you, that you also love one another. John 15:9-14, As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Continue you in my love. If you keep my commandments, you shall abide in my love, even as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. These things have I spoken unto you, that my joy might remain in you, and that your joy might be full. This is my commandment, that you love one another, as I have loved you. Greater love has no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends if you do whatever I command you. And that's what's interesting about this is I think most of the believing world, those that believe in Messiah, understand that we're to love Yah and love people, the two greatest commandments. The difference is we have not been taught how to love. And the instructions have been right there all along. It's the Father's commandments, it's his Torah that teaches us how to love. Because otherwise, if our definition of love is backed by what the world teaches, or even just even what's in our hearts and our minds, that love is meaningless. It's nothing. It's vain. The love has to be how the Father says so. And he says, if you keep my commandments, you shall abide in my love. But the point is, we should seek to cover one another. I see so often, especially in YouTube land, everyone's just so quick to especially not even in the Torah community, but if you look at just the general Christian community, they're always exposing this pastor, and this pastor exposes that pastor, and blah, 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 blah. Listen, can we correct in love? The whole Matthew 18 process is when you see someone sinning, you go to them one-on-one. Does it always have to be a public arena, right? So, anyways, we should seek to cover one another, not to bring each other into disgrace. Chapter 17, verse 3, Elohim is delighted by harmony among brothers, and by the intentions of a kind heart that takes pleasure in goodness. I want to read something else for you. This is actually right before what we were reading earlier. This is chapter 4. This is kind of interesting. Book of Nazarene, chapter 4, verse 15. While Yahusha was still in the mountains preparing his disciples for the task ahead, two wandering musicians came by, and one was always laughing and the other always melancholy. Yahusha said to them, "Many men have differing skills, and are you not skilled with the lute and the lyre?" They said, "That is so." Yahusha said, "Now, when the strings of your instruments are too taut, what happens?" They replied, "Then there is discord." And Yahusha said, "Is it not even so if the strings are too slack?" They replied, "It is." Yahusha said, "Sometimes the natures of men need slackening, for they are too taut, while sometimes they are too slack. Be like your instruments, always tuned to the right note, and let there be harmony between you." Praise Yah. Testament of Joseph 17, verse 4. When my brothers came to Egypt, they learned that I had returned their money to them, and that I did not scorn them, and that I sought to comfort them. After the death of Jacob my father, I loved them beyond measure, and everything he had wanted for them I did abundantly in their behalf. I did not permit them to be troubled by the slightest matter, and everything I had under my control I gave to them. Their sons were mine, and mine were as their servants. Their life was as my life, and every pain of theirs was my pain. Every ailment of theirs was my sickness. Their wish was my wish. I did not exalt myself above them arrogantly, because my worldly position of glory, but I was among them as one of the least. And this is exactly what Messiah says. He teaches us to be the least. The greatest among you shall be the least. But he that is greatest among you shall be your servant. That's exactly how Joseph walked. So truly, this study embodies walking like Messiah. Joseph is an amazing example of that. Testament of Benjamin, which is going to be next week, so I don't want to take too much from it, but this is so good. Because a lot of what Benjamin talks about is talking about, hey, look at my brother. He's awesome. Benjamin 1, verse 12, Do you also, therefore, my children, love Yahweh of heaven and earth, and keep his commandments, following the example of the good and holy man Joseph. And let your mind be unto good, even as you know me. For he that has his mind right sees all things rightly. Fear you Yahweh, and love your neighbor, and even though the spirits of Beliar claim you to afflict you with every evil, yet shall they not have dominion over you, even as they had not dominion over my brother Joseph. How many men wished to slay him, and Elohim shielded him? For he that fears Elohim and loves his neighbor cannot be smitten by the spirit of Beliar, being shielded by the fear of Elohim. Nor can he be ruled over by the device of men or beasts, for he is helped by Yahweh through the love which he has towards his neighbor. Praise Yah. I'm going to skip this because I don't want to take away everything from next week. See, therefore, my children, the end of the good man. Be followers of his compassion, therefore, with a good mind, that you also may wear crowns of glory. For the good man has not a dark eye. For he shows mercy to all men, even though they be sinners. And though they devise with evil intent concerning him, by doing good he overcomes evil, being shielded by Elohim, and he loves the righteous as his own soul. If anyone is glorified, he envies him not. If anyone is enriched, he is not jealous. If anyone is valiant, he praises him. The virtuous man he lauds. On the poor man he has mercy, and on the weak he has compassion. And unto Elohim he sings praises. And him that has the grace of a good spirit he loves as his own soul. We'll read more about that next week in the Testament of Benjamin. We're about to finish up here in the Testament of Joseph. Just a little bit more. Chapter 18. If you live in accord with Yahweh's commandments, Elohim will exalt you with good things forever. And if anyone wishes to do you harm, you should pray for him. Don't fight fire with fire, pray for them, along with doing good, and you will be rescued by Yahweh from every evil. Indeed, you can see that on account of my humility and patient endurance, I took myself a wife, the stepdaughter of the priest of Heliopolis. 100 talents of gold were given to me along with her, and Yahweh caused them to be my servants. And he also gave me mature beauty, more than those of mature beauty in Israel. He preserved me unto old age with strength and beauty. In every way I was like Jacob. Listen, my children, concerning the dream that I saw. 12 stags, 12 tribes, were grazing at a certain place. 9 were scattered over the whole earth, and likewise also the 3. And I looked, and these 3 stags became 3 lambs, and they cried out to Yahweh, and Yahweh led them into a fertile and well-watered place. He led them out of darkness into the light. And there they cried out to Yahweh until the 9 stags were gathered to him, and they all became like 12 sheep. After a short time they multiplied and became many herds. Later, as I was looking, 12 bulls were nursing from one cow, who furnished a sea of milk. The 12 herds and the innumerable herds drank from it, and the horns of the 4th bull ascended to heaven and became as a rampart for the herds, the 4th bull being from the tribe of Judah. And of course, this is Messiah ascending to the heaven and became a rampart for the herds, a rampart like a protection. And from between the 2 horns there sprouted forth yet another horn. And I want to read this about the 12 bulls nursing from one cow, furnished from a sea of milk. I actually didn't have this in my notes, but this reminds me of Isaiah 66. It says, before she travailed, she brought forth. Before her pain came, she was delivered of a man-child. Who has heard such things? Who has seen such things? Shall the earth be made to bring forth in one day? Or shall a nation be born at once? For as soon as Zion travailed, she brought forth her children. Shall I bring to the birth and not cause to bring forth, says Yahweh? Shall I cause to bring forth and shut the womb, says Elohim? Rejoice with Jerusalem and be glad with her, all you that love her. Rejoice for joy with her, all you that mourn for her, that you may suck and be satisfied with the breasts of her consolations, that you may milk out and be delighted with the abundance of her glory. For thus says Yahweh, behold, I will extend peace to her like a river, this is New Jerusalem, and the glory of the nations like a flowing stream. Then ye shall suck, and ye shall be borne upon her sides, and be dandled upon her knees. As one whom his mother comforts, so will I comfort you, and ye shall be comforted in Jerusalem. And when you see this, your heart shall rejoice, and your bones shall flourish like an herb, and the hand of Yahweh shall be known toward his servants, and his indignation toward his enemies. So let's keep reading. I saw a heifer which surrounded, this is 19 verse 7, and I saw a heifer which surrounded them 12 times, and which became to perfection and an aid to the bulls. And I saw in the midst of the horns a certain young maiden wearing a multicolored stole, and from her came forth a lamb. I believe this is Mary, giving birth to Yahusha the lamb. Rushing from the left were all sorts of wild animals and reptiles, and the lamb conquered them. Because of him, the bull rejoiced, and the cow and the stags were also glad with him. These things must take place in their appropriate time. And you, my children, honor Levi and Judah, because from them shall arise the salvation of Israel. And we've said this many times throughout the patriarchs that it seems as though it's possible that Messiah came from, we know he came from Judah, but is it possible that Mary was from the line of Levi, seeing that she was a near kinsman to Elizabeth, who was a daughter of Aaron, and all throughout the patriarchs. And it makes sense because Messiah is a king and a priest, so he would come from the kingly line of Judah and the priestly line of Aaron, being that he's a king and priest. It just makes sense to me. For my kingdom shall have an end among you, like an orchard guard who disappears after the summer. For I know that after my death the Egyptians will oppress you, but Elohim will work vengeance on your behalf, and will lead you into the promises made to your fathers. You shall carry my bones along with you, for when you are taking my bones up there, Yahweh will be with you in the light, while Beliar or Satan will be with the Egyptians in the dark. Just like in the, this is talking, of course, about the plagues and the great darkness, but the children of Israel had light. It's the same thing, I believe, in the last days between light and dark, and those who were in the kingdom and those who were out of the kingdom. Revelation 16:10 says, "And the fifth angel poured out his vial upon the seat of the beast, and his kingdom was full of darkness, and they gnawed their tongues for pain." While those who are going to be in New Jerusalem will be in the light. Isaiah 2:2. "And it shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain of Yahweh's house shall be established in the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow into it. And many people shall go and say, Come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of Yahweh, to the house of the Elohim of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law," the Torah, "and the word of Yahweh," Messiah, "from Jerusalem. And he," the word of Yahweh, "shall judge among the nations, and shall rebuke many people. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn any war any more. O house of Jacob, come ye, let us walk in the light of Yahweh." So Messiah's kingdom will be full of light, and the devils will be full of darkness, much like in the Exodus account. "Take Asenath your mother, and bury her by the hippodrome near Rachel your grandmother." And when he had said this, he stretched out his feet and fell into a beautiful sleep. And all Israel and Egypt mourned with a great lamentation. And at the departure of the sons of Israel from Egypt, they took along Joseph's bones and buried him in Hebron with his fathers. The years of his life were 110. And with that, brothers and sisters, is the finish of the testament of Joseph. I pray it was a blessing for you, and I pray that there's something that we can learn and grow from together with this. And I'm just so thankful that we can study like this across the four corners of Yah's earth. So let's pray. Father Yah, we just come before you again, and thank you, oh Yah, thank you for sending your Son, and that he offered himself on the cross for us, and by his blood we are healed, and our robes are washed by his blood, Father. And we just ask that you'd help us, that we would stay unspotted from the world and keep our feet, Father, in this path. Help us, train us, Father, through these tests, that we be not like the horse or the mule. Father, we just thank you so much for your Ruach that you sent us to guide us into all truth. And we just thank you so much, Father, for all you do, for creating the heavens and the earth in 6 days and resting on the seventh, and showing us your great Shabbat, Father, the Sabbath, that is a gift to us, and the rest of your commandments as well. In Yahushua's mighty name, we say Amen and Hallelujah. So earlier we read Psalm 13. We did a song about Psalm 13 maybe a couple months ago. We'll play that for you. And our Torah portion will be starting maybe 10-15 minutes after this one ends. If you'd like to join us, we'll see you there soon. Shabbat Shalom. Blessings, brothers and sisters.
Take counsel in my soul, having sorrow in my heart daily, oh yeah. How long shall my enemy be exalted over me? But I have trusted in your mercy. Rejoice in your Yeshua, and I will shape of death. Lest my enemies say I have prevailed against him. Those that trouble me rejoice when I am moved. But I have trusted in your mercy. My heart shall rejoice in your Yeshua. Thy will sing unto Yahuwah. Thy will sing unto looked after me.